haven't even cracked dawn yet here in Melbourne, Australia. But what I'd like to do is to introduce you to Christina Hoepner from Catalyst IT in New Zealand. Christine is based both in Wellington as well as up in the Wairarapa area in the North Island. Christine is our resident iMoot guru, and this is actually going to be her second presentation on Mahara, so hopefully we might be able to build and expand upon the first and be able to answer any little questions you might have had along the way. So Christine, I'll give you the mic.
Great, thank you very much for this introduction, Maren, and thank you to everybody who's joining in this morning from Australia, afternoon from the United States, and then various evening time zones from Europe. And today the plan is to really talk about the integration between Moodle and Mahara for an ePortfolio. And so I'm not going to talk a lot about how to actually create your portfolio in Mahara, how to set it up, what functionality there is, how you can work with that and all that, because Ziggy is doing such a fantastic job doing that already. And so I'm referring you, if you are new to Mahara, referring you to her presentation entitled Power to the Learner. And she has already given her first presentation at iMoot yesterday, and will give another one on Sunday/Monday morning, I think, and so you still have a chance to go into that. But I decided to really focus on the connection between Moodle and Mahara so that we don't have too big an overlap of what we are saying. I'll also try to monitor the chat as best as I can, so please put any questions in there and either Maren will pick it up for me or I'll pick them up myself. So when we talk about Moodle with the side of ePortfolios, of course we need to see why do we have two different systems. Well, HD Hurt, a Moodle and Mahara user in Germany, has put it really, really well by saying Moodle is theirs, meaning Moodle is the teacher's place. They have control over it. Because it is a learning management system, the teacher decides what can be put into a course. The teacher decides what students can upload, in which area students can upload things. And it is also geared quite a bit towards reporting, grading, and so on. So Moodle is theirs, whereas Mahara is yours. So that already indicates that Mahara, the ePortfolio side of things, is the space where the learner is in the center. And we deliberately designed it so that it does not incorporate a learning management system, but sits really next to the learning management system. Because universities and other educational institutions often already have an LMS, and therefore they don't really need or want to switch to another one, but they might want to extend the LMS functionality with ePortfolio functionality. And so instead of kind of trying to incorporate it into an LMS, have it separate. The second reason for the development of a separate system was from the project group back in 2006 to really create a personal learning environment, and also encourage the use outside of a learning institution and also beyond formal education. So that students, for example, could also keep their portfolio after they graduate, or if they switch a school or university, they could keep their portfolio in the space that they have already been using and just switch universities, but still have their portfolio in their space, so that they could really also look into developing a lifelong portfolio. And so with Mahara, while it started as a personal learning environment, we do now support a number of other portfolio types. So of course, first we have the showcase portfolio. That is where you present yourself, where you show off the good stuff that you have been doing, all the nice things you've been working on, and all the things that you have accomplished. So that is the portfolio that we know most frequently, because we know it from artists, we know it from employment portfolios as well, where people just really present themselves in the best light possible. But of course, there's not just the showcase portfolio, there's also a progress or developmental portfolio where you can see the steps that somebody has taken in order to get from A to B, and in order to show the progress and the development over time. So that is oftentimes also used for language portfolios, so that you see in the beginning when somebody starts learning a language, they may only know a few words, but at the end of a semester, they know 400, 600 or 1,000. And so this is another form of portfolio that is frequently used, and that also is really helpful for the learner, so that at the end of a period they can look back, they can reflect on what they have all done and can see the accomplishments. Then we also have a process portfolio where you detail how you are doing things. And a portfolio is very well suited for that, because you can keep everything in one space, work with it, and then show off what you have done. But of course, in the last few years, the assessment portfolio has also become quite important in Mahara, because a lot of organizations, while they see the importance of having a personal learning environment and use it as a showcase portfolio or progress portfolio, oftentimes they do want to tie it into their formal education, tie it into the curriculum, and therefore the assessment part does come in at some point. And so we do want to support that as well. But of course, as you can already kind of hopefully hear from what I'm saying, is there are no clear boundaries between those four different types. And there are many other types of portfolios. They all have kind of some components within each other, because you can also show off a reflection in a showcase portfolio. You can show a progress in your showcase to really highlight what you have achieved over a certain amount of time. And even when you have an assessment portfolio, you can again show that off somewhere, or it also shows your progress or development. And therefore, you oftentimes have some mixed types or hybrids of portfolios. So just very quick history of where Mahara comes from. It was developed where that little marker is on the right-hand corner bottom right corner of the world map in Wellington, New Zealand in 2006. But since then it has kind of grown into quite a popular environment that is being used around the world by schools, by universities, by other tertiary providers, and also by associations that go beyond the formal learning and education. So oftentimes e-portfolios are being used in professions and associations where people need to show off their skills or competencies and are up for recertification. And so you see it quite frequently used in nursing, for example. And just recently in New Zealand, we set up nurseportfolio.nz, which is now open to all nurses in New Zealand to create their portfolio according to the standards from the Nursing Council, and have that in there instead of just making the portfolio available to a smaller group of nurses. Instead, because nurses are also highly mobile and move from workplace to workplace, so to give them a space where they can keep their portfolio even though they might switch DHB, so District Health Boards. Mahara is a word that may not really be very familiar to a lot of people, and so you might wonder what it means. It actually means to think in Māori, and that was aptly chosen by the project team, I think, because creating an e-portfolio, working in a personal learning environment really means to think, because you're not dumping all that you have done into one place, but you're really looking at what you want to put into your portfolio. You reflect, you think about what you have done, and so that is a really nice representation of what the e-portfolio is about. But you don't just think when you work on your portfolio. There are a number of processes involved. Namely, you first can create content. And you can create content directly on Mahara. So you can set up your CV, you can write text, you can use journals, or if you prefer the term blog, you can use a blog to write your learning reflections and keep up with your learning. I've also seen people at conferences using Mahara simply to take notes. So they just create a journal entry or write into a text box, put their notes in directly, and then afterwards go back to them, expand on them or reflect on them, write a short summary about the session. So you can do all that directly on Mahara. But of course, we already have a lot of evidence or artifacts, learning evidence that we want to use in our portfolio on our computers. Because you give presentations, you write a document at university, you often write papers, essays and the like. And so, of course, those should also go into your portfolio. And while Mahara has the capabilities of you being able to write text, it doesn't have the exact same formatting options that you'd have, say, in your word processor or when you use a presentation tool. And therefore, you can collect all that content from your computer in your electronic portfolio online so that you can then show that off together. And these days, we also have a lot of content just sitting somewhere else online in social media. Lots of people give Prezi presentations or shoot short videos in Animoto or put videos up on YouTube or find interesting videos that they would like to reference in YouTube or Vimeo, have presentations on SlideShare and the like, so the list goes on and on. And of course, when you create your portfolio, you do want to put all those resources into it as well. You don't just want to have what you can do in Mahara. You don't just want to be limited by that. And therefore, you can aggregate from all those other social media sources in order to enhance your portfolio, in order to show off everything in context. Because what you can then do is, once you have all your learning evidence collected, you can reflect on those. You can tie them together, you can make the connection between a journal entry and a video, and you can really bring all these things together and then reflect on them. Then, of course, you organize them in your portfolio. And thank you very much for already putting some links to portfolios where you can see all that in action. Because what you have done up to the organizing point is really collecting your learning evidence or artifacts or whatever you want to show off in your portfolio, and now you're making a selection. Now you're curating that content and you decide what you want to show. So in one portfolio, you may want to show off your best things, so you may want to create a showcase portfolio. Whereas in another portfolio, you could really reflect on your journey that you have been on. But you, again, can still use the same content, because in a Mahara page, you basically only link to the individual items that either sit in your Mahara or that sit on other media. And you can have different representations of them in order to show off everything differently in context. And then, of course, once you have your pages created, you have your presentation platform, where you can show it to others by sharing it with them. And that is one of the strengths also of Mahara, in contrast to a number of other platforms, because essentially you are creating small websites with easy-to-use tools. You don't need to have a big CMS installed or server space somewhere else, but within a platform, you can create small websites to show off what you want to show other people. And yes, there are many other tools out there that can do that as well. And there's a lot of overlap with other tools. But one thing that you can do really well also in Mahara is set permissions, so that you can decide my showcase portfolio as something that I make public to everyone, like Diljo did, and so you can put the link into the chat. Or for your assessment portfolio, you may only want to make that available to your instructor. so that they can give you feedback on it. And then you might have another portfolio which you want to make available to everyone in the class that you're teaching or that you're taking part in. So you can be extremely flexible with who shall have access to your portfolio and make it suitable for the context that you need it in or want created it in. And since, though we've been talking mainly about ePortfolios, Mahara is also much more. The project team already realized quite early on when they were talking about Mahara that social interactions are really important. So you can always give feedback on portfolios if the author allowed it, because it is really important for your learning also, not just to put your content out and show off your things, but also get the reactions from people, get the feedback, learn from others, see what others think about it. And then you can also collaborate in different forms on Mahara, namely by using groups. So you could set up group portfolios, work together in a small group on a project, and then represent that as the outcome of your group. Or you could also use the discussion forums to discuss the topics of the project work or anything else. And last but not least, you can also network. So that really is important in today's world, and especially when you're on a multi-tenanted instance of Mahara, where there are different organizations coming together, then you really have the chance to talk with other stakeholders or with others who do the same thing, just in a very different area. As a small example, here in New Zealand, we have myportfolio.school.nz. That is a Mahara instance available to all schools. And that is really nice because everyone is on one instance, and students and teachers can move quite a bit during their 12, 13 years at school, and therefore the portfolio always stays in one place. But they switch schools, and so they can also switch authentication methods easily, but they keep their portfolio in one place. And because New Zealand is a relatively small country, but long stretched over across 2 islands, and some people live really remotely, whereas others live in metropolitan areas. So in some schools you may just have 1 teacher working on ePortfolios, whereas in other schools you have 5 teachers. So in the schools where you have 5 teachers or more working with ePortfolios, then of course you can kind of talk to each other in the hallways and see how others are using them. But when you are that lonely teacher in a tiny school where you only have 10 or 20 students, you don't have that opportunity because you're the only teacher there. Come in myPortfolio, the teacher from that one school can easily connect with the 5 teachers from the other school, and they can start exchanging opinions, can look at their own portfolios, can or might even be able to give access to student portfolios to really work together and network and set up their own personal learning environments and personal learning networks, and really also some communities of practice. And that is where I think is also the power in having a larger instance of Mahara available for a group of people, and be that a number of schools or tertiaries or associations, because then you can also have that incidental learning between them. You have the setting up of communities, so that you really also support each other outside of a really formal learning context, but make it more informal or non-formal. Thank you so much for sharing ePortfolio examples. But now let's, after this brief overview of what you can do in Mahara and kind of some of the concepts that we work with, how do we now actually get Moodle and Mahara talking together? And you'll find many more examples of how to use Mahara in Ziggy's presentation, so I'm now really going to focus on what you can do in Moodle. Well, the first thing is that you set up Mnet. Mnet is the Moodle networking, and all of you seasoned Moodle users will know that this is how you connect one Moodle to another, so that students from one Moodle can use the courses from another. And you can do pretty much the same thing with Mahara. You can connect a Mahara to a Moodle site through Mnet, and you don't need any system administrator to do that, but everything can be done on the front end. And the link takes you to the instructions of how you can connect your Moodle to a Mahara site. And that allows you to use the same login that you have for Moodle also for Mahara. So when your learners are in Moodle and want to get into their ePortfolio, they simply click on a link and then are taken straight through Mahara, don't need to remember a separate password or login information. You can also hook that Mnet up with other authentication methods like Shibboleth, SAML, or CAS, or LDAP, so that you can still log into the homepage of your Mahara site with one of those single sign-on possibilities or LDAP, but still keep the connection between Moodle and Mahara in order to really connect the two and export content or work with assignments, what we'll be looking at just right now. Siggy asked, there's just the problem if the login is a school email login. What happens when that email is cancelled after leaving school? That is very easily done, because all you need to do is, or in a lot of cases in New Zealand, what we do is we remove the student from the institution, so from the school on my portfolio, but the account is still kept. And then as soon as they are removed from that external authentication method, they receive an email about their internal user accounts so that they can continue using Mahara. And then they can also change their email address, or the site admin can change the email address for them. And they can continue, because you can also have many different authentication methods side by side. And that is what organizations do who want to give alumni access or continued access to the Mahara instance, because they do want to cap the access to the LMS or any other internal resources at the university, but still keep them there. And so you just give them a different authentication method. Thank you for your question, Ziggy. So now let's go into how you can actually, beyond authentication, connect the two. One is the Portfolio plugin, which exists in Moodle Core, and that allows you to export content to Mahara. The other possibility is to use the Mahara assignment submission plugins, which allow you to create a portfolio in Mahara and then have that assessed in Moodle with your standard assignment tools. And there are actually two of those plugins. The really important one is the Mahara Assignment Submission plugin, because that is needed in order to see the portfolios in Moodle. But we also always recommend to install the Mahara Assignment Feedback plugin, because that allows you to continue giving feedback on the Mahara page instead of only within Moodle. And these plugins were updated last year, so some of you might still have an older plugin installed if you have already connected your Mahara to your Moodle. So please make sure that you use the newer plugins that Aaron uploaded and that are now the only ones available for Mahara assignment submissions in the Moodle database, so that you have the very latest plugins, so that you can also submit portfolios, submit collections of portfolios, and also have the possibility to have the portfolios locked or unlocked. So let's take a look at these two possibilities in a little bit more detail. First is exporting to Mahara. That is the easy thing, because you don't even need to install any plugins for that, but it ships with Moodle directly. So once you have set up your Mnet connection to Mahara and you've configured the Portfolio plugin, so you first enabled the Portfolio plugin and then also enabled the Mahara Portfolio plugin specifically, you can start exporting user-generated content to Mahara. Here we have the example of a glossary entry. So wherever you see the little icon, which is a text file with a up arrow, that means you can export to any of the portfolios that you have hooked up to your Moodle. And in this case, we are uploading to Mahara. In a glossary, lots of different students can contribute. So students can only export their own content into their portfolio. So I would not be able to export Siggy's glossary entry. or Marin's glossary entry. You can only export your own content, and that is supposed to prevent plagiarism to a degree and not really get into any problems copyright-wise. And you can also export content from forums and assignments that you have uploaded to Moodle, because you might want to keep some of that in your portfolio. Because a lot of times, course, I don't know how your Moodle is set up, but a lot of Moodles are so set up that at the end of a course, the instructor removes the X, at least removes the X, at minimum removes the X's for the students to the class, or they reset the course entirely, removing all the content. And that means that the student does not have access to that content anymore beyond that, beyond the time frame of the semester. But they might want to keep the things that they have said in the course. So forum posts can be very important elements where you do reflection as part of an assignment, or assignments that you've uploaded. You might really want to keep those. Or also glossary entries where you spread it over writing a good definition. You want to keep those and not just let them go into the nirvana if you know you want to set up a portfolio. So with this functionality, you can export that content directly from Moodle into Mahara without having to copy and paste it, put it into a document, download it to your computer, and then upload that document to Mahara, or copy and paste and put the text into a Mahara text box. Because then you'd simply know, yes, this came from Moodle and I'm using it here. So once you have gone through a number of steps in Moodle in order to put it into your portfolio, eventually it'll end up in your portfolio, and if you click the Continue to Portfolio link, you will see it in your portfolio wherever it ended up. In this case, it ended up in my files area because I exported the snippet of text that I had as HTML files, so that not a journal entry would be created, but because it's not a journal, I just wanted some text with it. And now, like with any other artifact that I want to put into my portfolio page, I can include it in my portfolio and have it there, and don't have to worry about the teacher clearing out the Moodle course and not having it available anymore. So that's an easy way of how you can export your content from Moodle into Mahara. Now, on to the portfolio submission, so the other way around, namely that you create your content in Mahara and then make it available in Moodle. So for that, you need the Mahara assignment submission plugin, and once you have that installed, as teacher, you set up the assignment to, instead of using a file upload or the online text, you set it up to use the Mahara portfolio. And so when a student goes into the assignment, they will see all the pages and all the collections that are in their portfolio area on Mahara. So in this case, now they can decide what they want to make available to their instructor for teaching. And that setting up of the assignment is really easy because you as teachers know how you create a Moodle assignment, and that is the advantage of also hooking up Moodle with Mahara, because then you as teachers can use your regular tools that you're used to for assessing a portfolio. Now let's take a quick look at, or let's briefly talk about portfolio locking versus not locking. What does it mean? Well, when you assess something from a student, you kind of oftentimes don't really want the student to make any changes while you're looking at it, so that you know what you're grading, what you're giving feedback to is exactly what you had seen from the student, and they don't just submit something and then while you're still grading other things, they can still make changes to their portfolio. That's why you would lock a portfolio from editing. And you can turn that setting on in the Mahara assignment on Moodle. And so as soon as a student submits their portfolio, they will not be able to edit it anymore. So they cannot change the layout, the title of the portfolio, they can't remove text or images. So the majority of what they put into their portfolio is locked. What cannot really be logged is any third-party content like YouTube videos or presentations. So if somebody does take their video down from YouTube, then you can't really control it. But the majority of the content that is created in Mahara can be logged already. And Ziggy, yes, journals are also logged from editing journal entries, so you won't have the edit button there anymore. You can still continue adding to the journal, but you can't edit particular journal entries. But then you might also say, well, yes, this is my typical assignment. I ask the student to do something, have a finished project report, and I grade that. And that works fine with the portfolio logging. But you might also change your pedagogy around and look at the portfolio as a continued piece of work. And so it could be, especially if you're after students collecting evidence over a longer period of time, so not just having a week or 2 weeks to create their portfolio, but really keep a portfolio over a longer period of time, then you don't really want to have the portfolio logged while you're giving feedback, because the students should be able to continue working on their portfolio. So that is where the not logging aspect comes in, because you can set up your assignment so that the students submit their portfolio so that you have access to it and can use your regular Moodle grading methods, but the portfolio is not being logged, so that the students, while you're giving them feedback, can make changes. Then you go back, give them feedback again, and kind of have that dialogue. And Siggy asks, is that new? Yes, but the integrated journal is updated in the page if they add log entries. Yes, if you integrate an entire journal, the additional entries are added, but the entries that you already posted cannot be changed. And a lot of people do say, well, not logging portfolios is preferable, because then students can continue to work on it, because a portfolio is simply oftentimes different from just having a one point in time assignment. And so now that you've made the decision whether you want to log your portfolio or not log, and in some cases it is that you have one assignment where you want to log it and then another one where you keep it open, as soon as the student submitted their portfolio, even if it's only in draft status, it shows up in the gradebook. So in the regular place where you look at how many of your students have already submitted their assignment, it shows up. Instead of you being able to download the portfolio, it comes up as a link where the error is. And once you click that, you are being taken automatically to the Mahara page. You can look at the portfolio, you can give feedback on it, you can give feedback on the individual artifacts if you want to, or you can give feedback on the entire portfolio, or you can also keep the feedback for when you're back in Moodle. And to make it really easy for you, there's a back to Moodle button so that you don't have to work with different browser windows or remember how to go back, or go back to the dashboard and click on the link there. But you're being taken back directly to the gradebook again. And now that you're back in your gradebook, you can go directly to the grader overview that you're used to from other assignments in Moodle, where you see the submission status, when it was submitted, who it was, where the link is, whether there are any comments on it. And in this case, I had set up a rubric for the portfolio judging, so that you can use that for your assessment and also for giving feedback. So you could also use the marker workflow and the grading, any other of the grading methods, of the advanced grading methods that Moodle has available. And that really is the power of using the Mahara assignment submission plugin, or grading a Mahara portfolio in Moodle in general, because you as teachers can just use your known tools, and also the grades will show up in the gradebook. So instead of trying to keep Mahara grades in a spreadsheet and then manually calculating how that affects the grade of the rest of the course, you can just keep everything in the Moodle gradebook. And therefore students have an overview no matter where the assignment actually took place. And that is really, really powerful. Now, what to do though when you either can't install the plugin, your system administrator doesn't want to install it, or you think, well, it's a bit of a hassle just doing all that. There are a couple of alternatives that have been tried and tested and are being used successfully for a number of reasons. So the most successful implementation of an alternative is using a secret URL in conjunction with an export. So why would you do that instead of using the submission plugin? Well, right now, when you submit your portfolio into Moodle, as soon as you finish the grading, you don't have access to that portfolio anymore in Moodle. So if you do need to keep all the things that your students have done in Moodle and export it at the end of the term and store for 7 years, then you're a bit out of luck. So what you could do in that case is ask the students to create a secret URL of their portfolio, put that into Moodle, and also create an export of their portfolio. Usually that is being done as HTML export, so that you don't need to import the portfolio back into Mahara in order to view it, but you can easily just open it in a browser after you unzip the file. So that you can view the actual portfolio immediately under the secret URL. So that would be an unlocked portfolio. But you also have a static version of the portfolio available to keep for 7 years. So yes, Siggy, it is a very easy workaround and does help at the moment because we don't yet have the possibility to keep a version of the portfolio directly in Moodle. We do have some specifications for that already, but unfortunately there hasn't been any funding to put that into place. What we do already have though is if you say, well, we are not really using the Moodle gradebook, so I'm not really concerned about keeping grades somewhere else, then you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about the connection to Moodle at all, because what you could do instead is set up a group in Mahara where you allow submissions and then have those submissions archived. Archiving of submissions has been a feature in Mahara since Mahara 1.10, so since last October, and that allows you as teachers to, as soon as you release a portfolio, in the background a leap2a file is created that is placed on the server, and that then a system administrator can grab and just store for 7 years and keep accessible if needed, or if a student comes after a few weeks and wants to contest the grade. So that is functionality that we would like to add to the Mahara assignment submission plugin, so that people again can also use that functionality for Moodle itself when they use both systems. Now to something slightly different. So what we've looked at in the first 2 parts was first exporting content from Moodle to Mahara, when you've created content already in Moodle that you wanted to keep in your portfolio for longevity. The other thing we've looked at was how to work with portfolio content created in Mahara in Moodle. Because in Moodle, you can, as a student, you can't really set up a website. So it is very tricky actually to show things in context, because in a class, in a regular Moodle course, you don't have the capabilities to do that unless your teacher changes things around. And therefore, creating a portfolio or project report that consists of multiple elements might be easier to do that in the ePortfolio. But as teacher, you might still want to create that in Moodle. So these were the 2 things we looked at. Now, what else can we do by connecting Moodle and Mahara? Well, we can also transfer achievements, because a number of people might have already worked with badges. So when you finish an activity in Moodle, an assignment, or achieved certain things here in the iMode, for example, participating in presentations or going to events or tweeting, you can issue a badge directly in Moodle and then transfer that into your Open Badge backpack. First, of course, it is shown directly in Moodle, but you can then transfer it into your backpack along where all the other badges are that you've already earned. You can put it into a collection so that you can also compartmentalize which badges you want to show. And then if your Mahara instance has the Badge Displayer plugin installed, you can display those badges directly in your Mahara instance. So in this case, I had created two collections, namely one for my capstone project and another one for my IMO 2014 participation. And I can decide which ones I want to display in my portfolio. Because when I create a portfolio, the badge is or can be a very important component, especially if I earned it as part of my portfolio creation. And so you can use your regular Moodle tools that you have been working with for however long you've had Moodle or discovered through the course of the years. You can use those regular tools and still enhance your portfolio, either by directly exporting content or working with it, or in the case of badges, going via the Mozilla Backpack, where you keep all your badges and then, again, like in a portfolio, make a selective decision of which achievements you want to display in which portfolio. So in Mahara, I could also set up a page where I simply have all my badges shown just for my conference participations, or only the badges for a project, or only badges that I earned outside of conferences or formal trainings. And that makes it really easy to work with content over multiple systems without putting the same functionality that already exists in one system into Moodle. Because sometimes we say, well, why doesn't Moodle have a better wiki, or why doesn't it already include a portfolio? I mean, Martin de Gamas is working, or the Moodle HQ team is working on putting certain portfolio functionality in Moodle for an upcoming version. But why don't we have capabilities of MediaWiki directly in Moodle? Well, Moodle is a learning management system and therefore not a wiki engine. And the people working on a wiki engine can put all their resources and time and thinking into making the wiki better, whereas Moodle needs to look at how to also advance learning management components. And therefore, these days, it is often better to integrate different systems with each other via web services, APIs, or things like that, so that you have all the goodness of the learning management system. But in addition, you also have all the goodness of an ePortfolio system or any other system that you connect in order to work flexibly within the classroom and whatever you want to do, without having to wait until one project caught up to the others, and still isn't as good because simply there are not so many people working on just the wiki functionality or just the ePortfolio component. And so I think in the future we'll see more and more where you are able to move content from one system into another in order to achieve a cohesive learning environment, but also make best use of the functionalities that are available in each of the individual systems. And so if you've gotten any taste now of using Mahara or exploring it more, or if you haven't watched Siggy's presentation but got really enticed by her, then once you've watched it and trying Mahara, please give it a go at demo.mahara.org. That's where you can find a stock standard Mahara instance of what it looks like at the moment. We are currently on version Mahara 1504, which you can download here from this link, or also from Git if you're a developer and know your way around Git. And 1504 means that this release is from the year 2015 and from the month April. So our releases, our release numbering changed this year, because before we had Mahara 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 and so on, and we ended up at Mahara 1.10. But it can be quite tricky to decide when do you actually jump to Mahara 2.0 or do you continue with Mahara 1.11. And those numbers don't really mean a lot in our user community, because our community is mainly users and not so many developers. And therefore we thought, well, how can we make it easier for users to actually know which version of Mahara they are on, and how old it is, and how long it is being supported. And that's why we switched to a date-based versioning system that is similar to Ubuntu. And there we have 1504, and then in 6 months' time we are going to release Mahara 1510, which is 2015 and the October release. And so that makes it easier for people to know how old their Mahara instance is, and also for how long it is being supported. Because similarly to Moodle, our versions are always supported for 18 months. So Mahara 1504 is being supported until 1610. But in the case of 1504, we'll actually most likely support it for longer, because we are making a major change for Mahara 1510 in the sense that we'll put in Bootstrap for our CSS and JavaScript. So the interface will look quite different, and to allow organizations more time to upgrade, because there's really a lot of change involved. We will most likely, or we will support 1504 for a longer period of time, but generally it is 18 months. So Mahara is being released always in April and October, so 1 month before Moodle releases come out. So if you are the administrator of Moodle and Mahara at your organization, you kind of have a month where you can already start upgrading your Mahara site before you start upgrading your Moodle, if you're in a yearly upgrade cycle. And we do have 2 releases per year, so that we can cater to the Northern Hemisphere, but also satisfy us down here in the Southern Hemisphere, and also make features available really quickly to the community, instead of people having to wait for 9 months or a year or so until they are finished. So like Moodle, we are on a date-based release cycle, and features that get in by the cutoff date get into Mahara for the next release, and if it's after the cutoff date, they will have to wait for a little bit longer. And like Moodle, you can also customize your Mahara. You can upload logos easily from Mahara 1504 on. That's actually a feature that a high school student was involved in developing. For the entire site, you could already upload a logo into an institution, but that wasn't really possible for an entire Mahara site and always needed to go into a theme. You can also create themes. We definitely have a responsive theme, so that it also adapts nicely to a mobile device. And we also have a number of plugins available. But in contrast to Moodle, which has a humongously huge community, and therefore also lots and lots of plugins and customizations, the Mahara community is definitely smaller, and so we have fewer of those plugins available. And what we also still try a lot is to actually put in features directly into Mahara Core, so that everybody will have those available and doesn't have to worry about installing plugins. So just to give you kind of an idea of what those different themes could look like, here we have myportfolio.school.nz, a newly created theme for the site, which is modern, young, because we have kids on it. But you can also make a theme look different in a different context. So this is ePortfolio, who also have a Mahara instance, and so you can brand it really according to your brand. You can also style it similarly to what your Moodle looks like, so that you have the brand going across both sites, or you can style it entirely different. So we've seen a site for use by school users, here by a research project and also students. And here we have a Mahara instance for university students. This is a workflow by the University of the Arts London. And at first glance, it doesn't really look like a Mahara instance. And that is because Mike Kelly, who's the primary developer on this site, decided to make a really, really big customization. In this case, all public pages that are available on the site can be displayed directly on the front page. And so this is some development work that we are looking into putting into Mahara as well, because we've received feedback from the community quite a bit that they like this feature, that it does enhance what is being done on the environment, that it showcases student work or any learner's work really, really nicely. So that is something that we are looking into, because we do also want to listen to the community. And then here we have PalNet, which is by, the Mahara instance from the Principles Australia Institute. And that is a site where the portfolio aspect actually is still in the background. Front and center are groups. and people and events. So Palnet uses Mahara to have professional conversations. So they really have a community of practice website. And they also have customizations to book events and to have an events calendar there and things like that. And all that is possible because of our Mahara community. And while we are developing a software, it is actually the people that are behind it and that use the software that make up the community and for whom we are doing all the work and who all is involved in it. So, of course, we have users like a student and also a teacher. So even already when you're using Mahara, you are a member of the community and you contribute to it by maybe even just writing a forum post. You become a ninja, or support sending a bug report or writing a feature request, because all that definitely helps us learn more about how Mahara is being used, what features people would like to have, what integration points are missing. And then we have a bot which does just things in the background so that stuff can run automatically, similar to the packager down here, which just does things automatically on the server. But we also have translators who translate the Mahara into other languages, which is really, really important so that not everybody is bound by using the instance in English, but they can use it in French, in German, in Japanese, in Slovenian, and in many other languages. We also have a designer who makes everything pretty, and they are really, really important, as you could see from the small number of the designs that I've just shown you. Mahara instances can look so very different. You don't have to stick to the standard white and green. You can make it entirely your own so that people also know, yes, this is my Mahara instance. Then, of course, we also have testers who test everything that the core developers and also contributors write. And like Moodle, we also every code goes through a code review process or a QA process in order to eradicate as many problems as possible already before they get into the software. Thank you, Maren. And we also have documentation writers and people who give support, and we also have a security guard. So those are the people who make it so that Mahara stays secure, that security bugs are fixed. And last but not least, we also have community event organizers. Though those are all those of you who organize events for Mahara, where people can come together. And those are conferences like the Moodle Mahara Moot in Germany, or Mahara UK in the United Kingdom, or the Mahara Open Forum in Japan, or the Mahara Moot in France, and also Mahara user group meetings, because you are the connector. You are the person who brings people together to talk about Mahara and related softwares so that you can explore what you want to do and how you want to use the system and what it should be doing. So if you got interested in finding out more about Mahara, or have any questions, please feel free to contact me either via email or Twitter. And I look forward to seeing you in the Mahara community or at one of the events that are being held around the world. And now I think we still have a few minutes time for some questions. So please feel free to turn on your microphone if you don't want to use the text chat and ask a question, or ask in the text chat. And thank you very much, Siggy, for making all those posts and giving additional information. If there are any questions that I missed, please let me know or put them again into the chat so that we can take a look at them. And Maren, very good question. Can you upload work to Mahara offline and then sync later? That doesn't quite work that way, but what you can do, depending on which device you are, you can either use Mahara Droid, which is for Android, or Portfolio app, which is being renamed into Experience app, in order to upload content to Mahara. And how that works is that on the iOS device you can take a photo or you can take a video and then upload it later to Mahara once you're back online. And in Mahara Droid you can basically upload anything that can be a file on your Android device and then send that to Mahara later on. We just released a few weeks ago a newer version of Mahara Droid, which will also make it possible to upload to also already create journal entries on Mahara on the Android device in Mahara Droid directly, and then once you are again connected to Wi-Fi or 3G or 4G, you can upload it into your Mahara instance so that it sits in content. And that functionality has already been used for a number of years now, and so Southampton Solent University, so where Sam Taylor comes from and where Roger Emery still is, they have been using that very successfully with their merchant students, so students who have to go to sea for a number of weeks for their studies. And of course, internet is quite expensive on high sea or wherever they are. And therefore, they needed something to still work with their portfolios. So what they do in this context is that while they are on the ship, they take photos, they write their journal entries, and then really put everything ready. And then I assume as soon as they hit the land, they turn on their Wi-Fi or 3G connection and upload everything into their portfolio. So, and that really helps to create the portfolio in a timely fashion, because nothing is worse than sitting at the end of a term in front of your portfolio and haven't done anything, and suddenly within a day's time you need to create something for your portfolio. And that can be really frustrating because you have everything in hindsight. You can't really remember anymore what you did at the beginning, what the process was, and so on. So those portfolios are oftentimes not really as reflective or as insightful as those that have been kept over a longer period of time. And so the mobile app allows you to do that, even though when you're not in an online area where you can use the internet, and then just upload everything and then you can rearrange it in your portfolio. Siggy has a question on displaying badges. It worked before, but did I understand you right that you need a plugin for displaying them? Yes, Siggy, it is better to use the plugin, because the one thing we did, I think it was last year, having the workaround for open badges so that you create your collection in Mozilla in the backpack and then use create an iframe manually and then use that to display in your portfolio is not needed anymore, because Descendum created a plugin for displaying badges, the Mahara Displayer plugin, and that works with the Mozilla backpack. So you just install that plugin and can then see all the public collection that you have created in the backpack and can make those available. Descendum also created the Open Badge Passport and released that just on the 8th of April. And they are going to update the plugin, the Open Badge Displayer plugin, so that you can also connect to the Open Badge Passport, because not everybody needs to keep all their badges in the Mozilla backpack anymore, but you can keep them in the passport, and therefore have also that connection available and display badges from there. And yes, an administrator, like with any other plugin, needs to install the plugin. So you would just have to ask Ralph to install it. It's been working really well for us. We have it on a test instance, and we also use it in my portfolio and in some other installations, so that we can really work well with it. David Bell actually gave a presentation just very recently on that on Mahara at our Mahara Hui conference. And so if you go to maharahui.org.nz and click onto the schedule link that is on the homepage, you can already see his slides and see what he has done. And hopefully within the next 2 weeks or so, we'll also have the video recording of that presentation available. Any other questions before Maren is going to wrap the session up, because it's already 1 hour is already up.
No, right. Well, thank you very much, Christina. You've certainly covered a lot of ground there, and you've had us all very much engaged. So once again, from iMoot 2015, thank you and bye. Have a great day.